Welcome everybody to our latest episode of Tech Safe, coming to you from Worcester, Massachusetts, and servicing communities all across the country. Excuse me, maybe it's that smoke that's in the air from the fires burning up in Canada. Thank you everybody for joining us, and especially to our hosts here in Worcester who have been so gracious to give us this opportunity to bring you information that we don't normally get through mainstream media. Today, I am delighted to introduce our guest from New York City. Her name is Odette Wilkens, and she is the President and General Counsel of Wired Broadband. So welcome, Odette.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, we're very happy to be here. We are definitely very much involved in the 5G issue here in New York City, and we are very, very much involved with a lot of different communities. But before I go into that, I just want to tell you how we got started here. I first got started with this whole issue when I was giving a lecture, actually a presentation, at NYU Law School. And it was on a civil liberties issue. Somebody told me about a meeting regarding 5G in Greenwich Village in New York City. We're located in New York City. And I said, yes, I definitely want to go and find out what's going on. Well, I found out what was going on. I asked, who do I get in touch with? And he connected me to the people who were involved in the 5G issue in New York City. And then what I did is I got involved with them, and it was a grassroots effort. But I realized that what we need to do is to have a more formal effort in New York City. And so that's when we formed Wired Broadband. That is now a 501c3 corporation. We formed it in November of 2020. Now, mind you, I only got involved with this issue back in March or April of 2020. So it didn't take very long before we realized we had to really form a more formal network. And that is what we've done. And that has been...
I am so inspired by everything you've done, Odette, because not only are you working directly for your own city, but you're working for our whole country too. Can you tell us a little bit about the national EMF call that you do every couple of weeks?
Yes. I co-chair the National Call for Safe Technology, which is a coalition of national grassroots organizations and individuals. I co-chair it with Virginians for Safe Technology. And we talk about current developments, what's happening in each county around the not each county, but a lot of counties around the United States. Current developments, we share best practices, and we provide support for each other. So for instance, if there's a petition that people need to have signed, everyone know on the call, and they activate their own email lists. We have a lot of people around the country who come to these calls. And what's even more important with respect to in addition to the local issues that we support, we also support the federal issues on the national level. And the coalition, we're basically a coalition, and we join in submissions to the federal government. We have already done submissions to the Federal Communications Commission on digital discrimination, digital inclusion, and the EMS disabled, that's electromagnetically sensitive disabled, those who are disabled by or injured by wireless radiation. We did submissions to the Council on Environmental Quality. We did submissions to the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, to the Environmental Protection Agency's National Environmental Advisory Council, to the National Institute in Standards and Technology. We are really working together as a coalition. And I have to tell you, Cece, one of the best parts of being part of this coalition is that when you are meeting on a regular basis, and we've been meeting on a regular basis now for over a year and a half, we become very bonded. We know what we need to do. We know what we need to do to support each other. And so when we're working on these federal submissions, we don't have very much time. And so I have to tell you, in one instance, we gave everybody less than 24 hours notice to join. We just sent out a blast email. And in less than 24 hours, I think in 12 hours, we already got 50 sign-ons.
And by sign-on, you mean not just 50 people, but 50 separate organizations that are saying to our federal government, We have to do better where technology is concerned and start migrating away from all of this wireless toxic exposure towards safe, hardwired technology to and through the premises. And until we get to that endpoint, we have to provide accommodations to those who are becoming ill from or are already ill from radio frequency microwave radiation so that they can access our society. Because today there are so many people who get the headaches, the nosebleeds, the nausea, the dizziness, the anxiety, the stomach issues, and more just by going out in society where we've blanketed ourselves in microwave radiation. And to that end, I want to invite everybody to join us on June 16th, 7 p.m., that's Friday. That is World EHS Day, World Electrohypersensitivity Day. That was founded in France by colleagues there, and we are doing a program here in Massachusetts. Anybody is welcome to go to my website, which is safetech.org. That's Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and if you go to our events page next week, you will find the link to that event, and we invite everybody to come join with us. We anticipate that we will be having legislators with us and others who are going to tell their experience and what it's like to be disabled or affected by this spectrum disorder of electromagnetic sensitivity. Now, Odette, I was so impressed with the work that you've done in New York City. You have gone from community board to community board, and you have activated citizens, you've engaged legislators, you've engaged others throughout the community who had no idea what 5G is, other than they see these monstrous poles, giant towers, 32 feet, up in the air right outside their bedroom windows. And so I was grateful to have the opportunity to testify with you this week. And it was so impressive that you had legislators there as well as all these community leaders and citizens. So do you want to back us into that and how you activated the boroughs and the community boards in New York and what others can do to follow in your footsteps?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to do that. This has been definitely a grassroots effort, and we have been working on this for several years, but it really galvanized back in December when the city agency, Office of Technology and Innovation, came to a meeting on the Upper East Side at Community Board 8. And they were quite exercised about having a 32-foot tower right outside of their window and right in landmarked historic districts. Now, we have to go through hoops to maintain those historic districts. You can't change a sign. You can't change a letter. You can't change the position of anything unless you go through various hoops and various approvals. And yet these towers were going to go in right in front of landmarked buildings. And some of these are national historic landmarks. In New York City, just to give you an idea of what the landscape is, Cece, we have 59 community boards.
Okay.
And the Public Design Commission gave approval for a pilot program of about 200 towers to be put in the city of New York in order to obtain community input on the design, on whether they liked it or not, on the provisioning of services, whatever. Now, part of that pilot program, we think there were maybe about 40 community boards that were being considered for this pilot program. Now, basically, the city is considering putting in 2,000 of these towers initially, and it may be 4,000 because that is what the contract calls for. And it may go up to 7,500. We're not sure about 7,500, but at least 4,000 on the streets of New York. These are giant cell towers with 5 bays. On the top 2 bays are 5G millimeter waves. The next 2 bays are 4G, and the last bay at the bottom is Wi-Fi. Imagine that being right outside your window, right outside a school, right outside a medical facility. And there's no setback requirement. They can put it as close as they want to a structure.
So, Odette, how did that happen? How did they get this approved? Is it just because our public servants have no idea what they're up against?
They have no idea what they're up against. And this is under the franchise agreement. And our message to the city council, to the Committee on Technology, was that there was no notice. There was no way of having meaningful community input. That finally, when they did give notice, they only gave 60 days notice. And how do you learn about a technology that you've never heard about before? You don't know how it operates. And you have to go through the procedural hurdles of having it go through a committee, then having it go through the board. And you have to start making a decision without having full knowledge of what it is that you're voting on. And so this has been a bit of a catastrophe. The city has entered into an agreement with the site developer, which is CityBridge, in order to put in these thousands and thousands of cell towers on the streets of New York City without obtaining community input prior to entering into the agreements. And the agreements basically give the telecoms carte blanche. The telecoms say that they need the capacity for future demand. Well, that's not protected under the Federal Telecommunications Act. And there was a federal court decision in New York last year, Extranet versus Flower Hill, in which the judge clearly stated that the FCC rule allowing telecoms to come into communities based on wanting to increase capacity for future demand is not protected under the Federal Telecommunications Act.
Odette, I love that you've brought that up, because that is such an important distinction that I just, it finally clicked in my little brain not too long ago, that the industry does their marketing up front. They start promoting all these new services and products that they want to sell for their next revenue stream. So they own the airwaves with mainstream media. They put all their advertisement out there, for example, about 5G. And then once they get the public hooked on the idea, then they come into the towns and they say, well, the public is wanting all this new service and technology, so we need to get that infrastructure in, because the current infrastructure can't handle everything that would be needed once they start hooking up 5G and the Internet of Things, where they're hooking up hundreds of devices inside our homes that, by the way, are radiating you, like your stove and your TV set and every other smart product that they're promoting out there. And so they go in and they push their product. Then they say, we need more capacity. And then our towns go, oh yeah, everybody wants better service, right? Without disclosing any of the risks to property values, to public safety, to health and the environment. So I have to tell you, I was so inspired by the hearing that was held in New York City on this, what's called the Link SIS, or the Link New York City program, or Link 5G. I guess it's got two heads on this little monster. But I was so impressed with Chairwoman of the Committee on Technology, Jennifer Gutierrez. She actually had done her homework. She had questions prepared in advance that she wanted to know about while she had both her tech committee there and this CityBridge. And she wasn't shy about asking hard questions. And I went and I looked up her biography subsequent to that. And she grew up in a family that earned every single penny that they had to their name. There were some health complications, language barriers. When she was 10 years old, she was doing interpreting to get health care for her family. So this is a woman who has lived in a system where she sees improvement opportunity, and she's gone after it. And now she's on city council. And I actually sent her a personal note today thanking her for being the kind of public servant that is not just going to go with what industry is selling. And it looks to me like she is somebody who's going to do her due diligence. And I just sent her a note, mom, to say, hey, feel free to come to one of our free public education webinars, because we know it's a lot to learn. And if everybody goes out to Massachusetts for Safe Technology on my events page, you can print this flyer. You can put it all over your town. You can take it to your office, to your gym, to your doctors, and just invite people in. You don't have to know all the facts. I'm still learning them, but I know a fair amount more than anybody off the street because I've been studying this for 10 years. So we will do the heavy lifting for people who are new to this conversation. We will teach you what's going on in the science, what all those risks are. We will teach you what's happening in the courts, and we'll teach you what's happening with public policy. So I sent that off to Chairperson Gutierrez today because this weekend she could keep her family safer. And I let her know it's not just those cell towers, it's every radiating device. But it's not rocket science to fix. You know, I carry my little bag of tricks with me. All you have to do is flip your router around, plug an Ethernet cable back in, get the little adapters that you fasten into your own device, and then just go in and turn off antenna by antenna by antenna. And if you can, we highly recommend you get an EMF or a radio frequency detection meter. This is the one that was recommended at the EMF Medical Conference. It's called the Safe and Sound Pro 2. I don't get any kickback on this. This is just the one that they recommended at the medical conference. It's about $400, but I got a device like this put on loan in my public library, so everybody can borrow it for a week and then go measure, get your data, see what your exposures are, and it will be very telling to measure those cell towers and kiosks in New York City, because right now I think they've only got, well, I think right now what I learned in the hearing is they've only got the Wi-Fi antennas turned on.
Yes, well, I've measured with the Safe and Sound Pro in New York City on the Upper East Side. And on one corner, I measured almost 1 million microwatts per meter squared on the street.
So, you know, they're selling this program as, oh, you know, kids who don't have access to do their homework, they can come to one of these and stand there out in the weather and in the dark. That's not a safe solution.
No, it is not a safe solution.
And 1 million microwatts per square meter in the scientific literature in our indoor facilities, in our homes, our schools, our workplaces, they want us to be at 10 or less. Not 10,000, 10.
Yeah, and exactly. And so I registered it at close to 1 million.
Oh my goodness. And Odette, there was a convention held many years ago with the scientists in Salzburg. And at that time they said, okay, we've got a sense of what it should be indoors. What about outdoors? So at that time, when cell towers were still being placed in industrial parks 300 feet up in the air, not 30, 300 feet up in the air, far away from where people are, they said even if outdoors we were at 1,000 microwatts per square meter, that might be safe enough. Now, mind you, there's no safe level of man-made radio frequency microwave radiation in the scientific literature. But it could perhaps be safe enough at 1,000 if you weren't right under the emitting antennas.
Right,
and
exactly.
If
and
you
a lot
have,
of people...
Yeah, and if you have a safe space to go home and detoxify in. But if you put these cell towers at close range to where people live and go to school, their bodies will never get a break. And when you put it outside somebody's home, that prohibits the brain, that radiation prohibits the brain from releasing melatonin as part of our sleep cycle. And without melatonin, we don't sleep right, and it inhibits our body's ability to do proper cell repair and regeneration that we would normally do at night. So basically, when you put a cell tower at close range, you are condemning everybody in those facilities to poor health. And we get report after report after report of people who actually are getting very sick to the point where they have to abandon their homes, as we saw in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Courtney Gilardi was in New York visiting her sister and came in and testified with you this week. And in her testimony, she talks about how she and her children, their dog, all got sick and had to abandon their homes. But another time we can talk about the wonderful legal work that's happening, and our state level Massachusetts Association for Boards of Health has sent in testimony to the courts to support these families who are getting sick. So it's really short-sighted once we know in our community to allow this to happen, because if you let these toxic towers in, you're going to pay. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was our message to the Committee on Technology, and Chair Gutierrez heard us. And the good news is that there were 16 community boards in opposition that have issued disapprovals or moratoria. Do you know how many people that represents? Up to 800 community board members, because there's 50 community board members for each community board. They represent an average of 2 million New Yorkers. That's more than a quarter of the entire New York City population.
So in essence, representation was there where 2 million New Yorkers are saying, we do not want these cell towers in our communities. Bravo,
Exactly.
Odette. That is phenomenal. I am so excited to see the work that you guys are doing. What do you think is going to happen now after that hearing on Wednesday?
Well, we're following up, and we're continuing to get more community boards on board. We are educating them. Again, this is a new technology, and we're hoping to get even more community boards on board so that we have even a larger representation of the New York City population. Now, most of the witnesses, I'm very happy to say, at the hearing were overwhelmingly opposed to 5G towers on every single issue, from aesthetics to health to environment to cybersecurity to surveillance to privacy. You name it, it was there.
Great.
And what was most impressive was that the head of Silicon Harlem came on, and he said that the digital divide is 5G. 5G is the digital divide. That will not help the digital divide, because in order to have 5G, you have to have a 5G phone. So basically, all of these generations, 3G, 4G, 5G, now 6G, these are there's built-in obsolescence, and it's built-in obsolescence by design, so that you have to then buy a new phone, because they're going to the telecoms will deactivate the 2G, the 3G, the 4G. So it forces you into their market of 5G. And then they say, look at our market share. Look at all the people who want it. Well, they only want it because there's no alternative. You're not giving them alternatives. And so there, the competition is no longer existent, because all the telecoms are working in basically together. They're coalescing under this 5G banner, so everybody has to get a 5G phone. Well, it's not. And so when they say that they're trying to put in additional capacity for future demand, it's demand that they're creating, and that is an artificial demand, because they're forcing people into this new technology, because they're going to make everything else obsolete, just the way that they're doing in New York City. They're taking out the copper wires. Well, why are they taking out the copper wires? Nobody asked them to take out the copper wires. That's important for emergencies. They're saying that 5G is going to be great for emergencies. Well, this is wireless infrastructure. Anything can stop the wireless connection. If you have trees, perhaps if we have a thunderstorm and we have torrential rain, or a building, or whatever it is, you're going to get interference. But if you have a wired connection, you have fiber optics, cable, copper wires, there's no interference from the elements.
Exactly. And we have a situation in my town where the industry came in and said, we can offer a service. We can bundle the phone, the cable, and the internet, and then we have it all in one service, so we don't need to maintain those copper landlines anymore. Well, guess what? We live in the Northeast, and we get blizzards and other weather conditions that take down the phone lines, right? But we could always pick up our landline and call for emergency services. When you take away the landlines, then you cannot call an emergency, because all of those services they've sold us on bundled together require electricity to run. And when the electricity goes down, we're screwed.
Exactly. And not only that, but the amount of electrical consumption, energy consumption of 5G is exponential.
Yeah.
If we are trying to have a carbon footprint that is reduced or diminished, and New York State has the most aggressive climate program in order to bring things down to zero emissions in terms of fossil fuels, well, guess what? The wireless industry hasn't even been addressed.
No, it hasn't. And even as far back as 2012, a Greenpeace analyst said if the cloud were a country, it would be the 5th largest consumer of energy in the world. And look how much more we have pushed on in the last, hang on, I got to do my Zoom thing here, in the last 10 years. So it's ludicrous, and it's so great to go to these hearings and hear everybody speak about this.
Exactly.
Now, Odette, we've got about 2 minutes left. So what advice do you have for people who are just joining the conversation, or for public servants who really have been sold by industry?
All right. Well, the important thing is to connect with the grassroots groups who are doing the work.
And how can people get in touch with you?
We hold meetings every Tuesday, and we invite elected officials and organizations and individuals and community board members and community board chairs. So there is a central touch point where people can convene. We can talk about strategies. We can talk about whatever is going on, best practices, and we become a coalition so that when there is a need for everyone to work together and to show a united front, that is what happens. Now, it doesn't matter if initially there are only 4 or 5 people.
Right.
That's how it started out. Now I'm getting 25 to 30 people, and it's just a few months later.
Excellent. So where do they find you?
They find me at Wilkens, OWILKENS, at wiredbroadband.org. That's wiredbroadband.org.
Okay. Odette, you have just inspired so many of us, and we're so grateful to connect with you and to be able to follow in your footsteps and take action, most importantly, when you reach out and say, hey, here's an opportunity in this state or this community. And we're so very grateful for your activism at the state and local level, and what you're doing legally at the federal level. So you are an attorney and 20 years in the tech industry, and we are just so grateful that people start where they are, they bring their skill set, and together we work toward a world of safe technology. So thank you, Odette, for being here with us. Thank you to all of our viewers, and thank you especially to WCCA TV for allowing us to come play in your sandbox. Have a great tech safe day.